Hey, how's it going? I'm Dan Fradenburgh for dandoesdeals.com. This is not a chance encounter. This is the dandoesdeals.com interview series where I have people back. I do not have people on this series unless they've already done their chance encounter. And so if they're on these dandoesdeals.com interviews, that means I want to know more, or I am getting more involved with the person I'm talking to. So Jason Williams, how you doing today, Jason?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing today, Dan?
I'm fantastic. And a lot of people know you through your wife, Angel Williams, who she's the big social person. She's the co host on the REI Rocks review with me. And so, as far as you go, you're always going to be investing as a team with her. And I've just got you on today to review where you are right now as far as being a syndicator goes. You've already been on the chance encounter, so we got those details, and this is to find out if anything's changed and to give you guys the most featured people who I have a chance encounter with first of all. So the first thing then, I guess, Jason, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit for people who don't know you?
So I'm Jason Williams. I'm co-founder of the Academy Presents and also Lorren Capital. Lorren Capital is our investing arm. The Academy Presents is our education platform, which Angel's the face of and voice of. So I kind of run sort of the background with that and work on our investments. So
All right, beautiful. And so let's go through the same questions, but way faster compared to the chance encounters. But before we do that, but wait, check your eight over there. It's your five. Can you see if they've hit the subscribe button, Jason? Like you can tell if it's
they
red.
they didn't they
They
didn't
didn't.
no.
Well,
Oh,
okay, well,
there they
maybe
go.
maybe they can do that later for me. But all right, cool. So the five distinct motivations, I think they still matter on the second visit, and the reason for that is because maybe it changed. So the five distinct motivations, the first of them are to preserve purchasing power. Okay, so if you have enough assets where you've got the passive income to make ends meet, then the only reason you're going to make another acquisition is to make sure that that still is in play. So that's not me. How much of this is you right now, Jason? Is that a big concern of yours in your acquisition strategy?
I mean, yeah. I mean, passive income is definitely um, a goal, but also just creating generational wealth is our main thing right now. So, and
Right on.
that helps curb the inflation stuff. It's better than money sitting in a bank account losing value every day versus something tangible that that increases in value over time.
Yep.
So.
Yep, and it's got great durability for that. But the next one too, you must have run into this because of your chemical engineering background. Is this something that comes to your mind that it makes way more sense to basically work for capital instead of working for cash income? Is that something that you want to comment on?
Yeah, so I actually just recently stopped my W-2 job this past summer, and
Congratulations.
thank you. And so a long time ago, I realized that if I'm going to put in the work, I'd rather make myself rich than somebody else. And so by doing that, I'm working on just getting more capital, more equity, and properties, stuff like that, so I can go into the generational wealth that I mentioned earlier. So.
Mhm. Beautiful. And the next one that is pretty common, fast tracking retirement, that doesn't really seem to be big on your list of priorities because it's not like, like being a syndicator. That's not, that's not the kind of business where you're just like, oh, I'm just physically exhausted. Like if you're swinging hammers every day. So like it's fast tracking retirement. Is that something that is
Well,
on your
well, it
mind, or?
it fast tracked my corporate retirement. Like I said, I quit my W-2 this past summer, so now I get to do what I want to do. And
Mhm.
so I don't ever, right now, I don't foresee me ever not doing this.
So there you go. That's pretty awesome. Now, the next one, this is pretty tongue in cheek, the ambitious side, generational wealth. You have a different inspiration for that, which I kind of put on the last motivation here. So do you want to talk about that? That's really your why, which is what I'm trying to get from these distinct motivations is figuring out people's why. So do you want to go into some detail about that, Jason?
Yeah, so my grandparents started something with my parents before I even knew anything, and that was starting our ventures into real estate and other types of investments. And so what I have four children. I want to create something similar for them so that they don't really have to want whenever they're adults. In particular, I have a special needs son who is very expensive, and I don't want my three other daughters to worry about having to figure out how they're going to have to pay for his services whenever I'm gone.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's a big thing is we'll take care of them after we're gone. So yeah, create the generational wealth and teach them the values to carry it on and grow it. So,
I love it. And the next question,
but
this one,
you missed the one buy up the town.
yeah, buy up the town, right? And you got a local piece, right? So that's also part of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so I am actually working on buying up my town. I invest where I live, and I'm well on my way into to getting actually a significant portion of my town. So
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing that I want to emphasize as well because when I was in the mastermind and mentorship that really got me on my feet, understanding how this business works, the one that they were teaching the direct to seller approach, which now that I know as much as I do, they're basically teaching regular people how to do exactly what brokers do. Okay, which is just knocking on doors, look for sign of distress, driving for dollars and all that sort of stuff. And after I was finished that mentorship, some of the other people who were in there more to continue their existing business rather than starting one like where I seem to be, they were mentioning that you are up against people who went to high school with the owners, or at least their parents have known each other for ages, and they're hitting them up like once a week. Hey, you ready to sell your building? Hey, you ready to sell your building?
yeah.
Hey, you ready? Right? And that's what everybody's up against. But you actually are taking over your hometown, which I think that's a really like the nicest thing is I think that you've got a good reason to do it, and that's really important as well. It's not just something about like ego and
Yeah.
having to have your name on a skyscraper.
So I think actually buying up my hometown is more the means to the end, not the end itself. So I couldn't care less if I had every building in town. I'm
Mhm.
just doing it for the other purposes I mentioned earlier. So
Right, exactly. But as far as tolerance for risk assessment, it's funny because you get all these coaches, showing off the flashy cars or their name on a plane and stuff like that. But really, like somebody had to pay for it, and it's probably the person in the camera, which is not so good as far as I'm concerned. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So the thing that I always want to do if I'm going to be doing business with somebody is I want to know what's their relationship to risk. So in the tolerance for risk, I do it kind of tongue in cheek. I like to joke that it's like Pokemon cards or Air Jordans as investment asset classes are a bit risky. But even using real estate, if you prefer, it might be better to use real estate specifically. But what's too risky for you as far as an investment, Jason?
so that's Basically, anything that's too risky for me is something that I'm not educated in. If you
Hmm.
get educated in it, then the risk goes away.
Hmm.
That it reminds me of the guy who jumped from the hot air balloon without a parachute. Remember, he didn't see that as risk because he prepared for it for like 20 years. So if you prepare for it, nothing can be too risky. Risky is jumping in without knowing anything about it. So if you find an investment that you're interested in, learn about it, research it, know what it is about, and then you can jump in with your eyes open, and it doesn't get too risky that way. So
Yeah, so I guess your first dollar and your last dollar, they both look the same, and I think that that's what's coming out from your underwriting side, because like it doesn't matter what you're buying, you're always going to be trading within a band, right? You know, it's like if it gets this high, then you're going to be like no, pull the plug, and if it gets too low, you're like no. You know, that's what you're doing in every industry, and part of that comes with the deals that are offered to the investors. And I think there is part of this where you're shopping around for returns, but the other side is finding the people who will handle it responsibly and where you know they're not cooking the books. So I think that that's a lot of what is implied in your answer there, as far as you know, like how the risk isn't there, because you're still going to be relying on people who are interested in the asset class that you're in. And I think that's really a curator role that everybody ends up gaining in their industry. It's, you know, you're the one who picks the really good ones is basically what a curator is, right? But as
right.
far as the roles in a commercial real estate deal, then I'll hit this so it does so that my screen goes away. The six different roles in here. The most generic one of the bunch is the repositioner, and so like as far as repositioner roles, I think that that is pretty big, like a big part of what you do because you focus on the underwriting. Do you want to say a few words about your capacity as a repositioner?
So that would be like acquisitions and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I underwrite all of our deals, and I run them through the ringer. I verify all of my assumptions with my team members, make sure that they're on board with the assumptions. And so that gets us going in the first go around just to make sure that the deal is worth even looking at.
Hmm. And
Um,
if I can stop you there, an idea of an assumption, to my mind would be, okay, if we're going to install a new coin operated laundry facility, when will that be completed, and then when will it start making some money? You can do some assumptions like, which might be wishful thinking, of saying like, oh yeah, that'll get turned around in 30 days. Whereas it would be a different assumption to say it'll be turned around in 45 days, or so those would be the guesses that you're making that are being called assumptions, just to kind of clean it up. Is that a good, like, can you give a better example of an assumption, or do you think that's buttoned up
well,
pretty well?
no, that could be one that's I think would be a very minor one. Um,
Hmm.
I don't think that specific example won't affect like the NOI that much.
Hmm.
But what will affect the NOI and can make or break a deal is, all right, I'm assuming I can bump rents this much. Um, I'm going off of comps, so I have a good basis on why I think it can be bumped up this much. Um, Bumping it up too much, you're going to be changing your tenant base because the tenants are going to move out because it's going to be too expensive. So it's a balancing act, and it's also what your business plan is. If you're planning on changing your tenant base, you can bump them up really high if you
Hmm.
can offer the amenities that justify it. So I mean that's more of what the assumption I'm thinking is, and
Hmm.
also if you have like classic units and they're bringing them up to something modern, then say, well, I think I can turn a unit every week or 2 weeks or whatever. There's 150 units, so how long is that going to take? Does that mean I'm going to have to bring in more people to do it? That's another assumption. It's like I'm going to assume I'm going to do 150 units in 2 years.
Mhm.
So you're going to have to bring some extra manpower to do that, but it is possible. And I mean, it's just all that's what dictates your business plan. So
Beautiful, beautiful. So then, and as far as operations go, I know that your current building it's third party operations, but you do still have some role in dictating rent
so
bumps and things like that, right? So,
it's third party property management.
mhm,
Operations, though, and asset management is managing the managers. So I'm
mhm,
on weekly calls with them, um, constantly texting, emailing back and forth throughout the week. So
mhm,
there's more to operations than just property management.
mhm.
So
Okay, and so and then as far as like, do you want to expand some more on your roles, or do you think that that's a good summary as far as what you'd want to share in your
I mean, I think it's a
interactions?
good summary.
Okay.
With us being local, I can go out there almost at a moment's notice.
Mhm.
These are the bread and butter of Lorren Capital, so that they are a priority. If something happens out there, I like drop everything I'm doing and head out there. So, I mean, that's part of operations. That's part of being local. So,
I love it. I love it. As far as contractor relations go, like that's not really in your wheelhouse, but you do. You're the manager of the GCs and whatnot, right? So, is there anything you can comment about your relations to contractors, including like, hey, if you're a contractor in the Wichita Falls area, make sure you reach out, or what would you say?
regarding contractors, that goes sort of back into the asset management that I mentioned earlier in operations. I would, if I don't like to deal personally with them, I try to get them to deal with the property managers who are actually on site, and I can be out there if needed, but I would prefer that the managers handle them. So I'll bring in a contractor, introduce them to my manager, and say, "All right, y'all take over from here." So, and then I'll step
Beautiful.
back.
All right. And the financier part, everybody has some investor relationships parts of what they're doing as repositioners. But you're also a sponsor KP of your current deal that you've had for almost a year now. So is there anything you want to say as far as sponsorship details? We'll get to your buy box in a second. But anything you can say on the KP side?
Well, apparently, I guess it's uncommon for most people to sponsor their own deals, at least right off the bat. But Angel and I were our key sponsors on one of our first property, and going forward, we're the main sponsors as well. And we just have a good team that can bring in capital and help in other ways. So,
Mhm. Mhm. That's awesome. That's awesome. So that's the different roles. So as far as the buy box, geography is the biggest one for you, which is Wichita Falls. Do you want to talk about Wichita Falls, the area, a little bit?
so Wichita Falls has not grown in population in 60 years. The population in 1960 was a little over 100,000 people. The population in 2020 was a little over 100,000 people. So it goes up or down 1% every year. So this is a very stable market. We have an Air Force base here that's, I think, the largest NATO Air Force base in the US, maybe even the world, where they train all the European pilots and everything. So this Air Force base is not going anywhere anytime soon. And if it was, we would have an 8 year notice before that happens, and that hasn't happened yet. So we're at least good for another 8 years. Um, we're getting two brand new high schools here, so we're getting a lot. We have businesses, new industries coming in. So I mean, it's a pretty nice market. Without the growth, would I invest here if I didn't live here? Probably not, but I do live here, and
Mhm.
I can be on a property in 5 minutes if I need to. This is a small town, so I mean it's perfect for us. So that's why we invest here.
Right, right. And so usually when I'm talking about what you guys are up to, the first thing I like to say it's Texas close to DFW, which is 2 hours. So I guess it's closer to Fort Worth than it is to Dallas, right?
Yeah, it's an hour and a half to Fort Worth, 2 hours to Dallas. So, and we can constantly take trips, day trips down to DFW. I mean, sometimes we'd leave at like 4 in the afternoon, get down there at 6, do what we need to do, and come back before
Hmm.
bedtime. So, I mean, we don't need to stay the night or anything. It's just a normal for us to drive, and also that also means that like contractors can come from DFW
Hmm.
and split and do their thing during the day, and then they can go back home. They don't need to put them up for the night or anything. So I mean, it is 2 hours, but it's Texas close. It's like you said, people are used to driving 2 hours. It doesn't matter. So
Hmm. Hmm. Right, right. So I've heard some people, like actually, it's more Angel will say that some people say it's a secondary market, but it's tertiary. But I don't know. It seems like it has to be in the path of growth for me. I know that it hasn't been growing, but it's like Texas has been pretty popular over the last couple of years and beyond. So. Uh, that's my 2 cents on that. So then, as far as the sizes of the buildings go, I know that like you've got the one that's it's 72 units, right?
yeah, our current 172 units. We have another 88 unit one we're working on. We've had LOIs out on 280 units, 150 units. So I mean, that's the size range we're looking at. Um,
Hmm.
72 up to 300. So
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, cool.
and Wichita Falls has plenty of them.
All right, awesome. So normally in a chance encounter, I go through and I say, all right, so then who can you disproportionately help? So as far as like people in the business here, like is there somebody that you really need to talk to without breaking any 506B rules?
What do you mean by that?
It's you're not supposed to entice investors if you have any
No, I mean,
506B
who do you
deals.
mean? Who am I trying to help?
So who can you disproportionately help? Usually on chance encounters, I mentioned like I'm looking for sponsor KPs similar to yourself all the time, and that's who I generally feature on the DanDustDeals.com interviews. But who are you like maybe financiers, or like I know Angel, she likes to educate beginners. Who's best to reach out to you where they'll be like, oh, holy
Oh,
moly, I'm so glad I caught you. I guess it's repositioners for the underwriting assistance,
yeah.
right?
So yeah, people, if you can actually see my background, I do help people with their underwriting all the time. Um, so I guess that's who you're talking about. You can click this QR code here. Um, if you
Yep,
need
scan it with
a
your
second,
phone.
yeah, second set of eyes. So yeah,
Mhm. Okay,
I've
cool.
I've helped
And
people walk away from deals and help people get them under contract. So
yep, awesome, awesome. And the best way to reach you, you mentioned the scanning the code will work. We also feature you on the REI Rocks Review every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So I'm sure that's another great way to catch on. You're even a co-host quite frequently, which is pretty awesome.
yeah,
All right,
I'm
awesome.
usually there, even if I'm not on camera. I'm usually there. Can catch me on LinkedIn as well. So
All right, excellent. So thank you very much for watching. Please do hit the subscribe button so that YouTube starts paying for these videos instead of me. But other than that, I guess you need to know that it doesn't cost you anything, and it just means that my videos will show up on your list of suggestions. But Jason, thank you very much for being the first in the dandoesdeals.com interview series of commercial syndicators who I think are worth getting another catch up with and finding out what they're doing right now. So thank you, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.